Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The next one is a pro-revenge story. The whole mess went down just last year at this big manufacturing joint in Europe. Can't tell you exactly where, but you get the idea. I'd done my apprenticeship there as a machine operator and stuck around for about a month after finishing up. Then they brought me into the office to cover for someone on vacation. I was like, sure, why not? Better hours and no getting greasy. They showed me the ropes on their systems, which was a breeze since I'd been building those parts for a year already. When that guy came back from his trip, they kept me on permanently with the sales and quality crew. Sweet deal. Fast forward 7 years and our little squad had ballooned from 5 to 15 people after some reshuffling. Made things way smoother. Last fall, our boss Roger retired after like a million years there. After Christmas, we got this new young gun manager named Kyle, who was around my age, 27, but man, was he ever a royal jerk. Couple weeks before Kyle started, we had a fresh recruit join up, super nice girl named Jessie, who was only 19 at the time. I was the one training her in. Anyway, I came in one Tuesday to find Kyle just going ape on poor Jessie, screaming bloody murder at her. Turned out she'd filled out some paperwork wrong, which happens to all of us newcomers, no biggie. But Kyle was having none of it. Here's more or less what he yelled at her. "You stupid little idiot! How damn dumb can you be to mess up a simple form? I should fire your ass and make sure you never work in this field again." Jessie was straight up sobbing at that point. Kyle then stormed off and slammed his office door like a raging child. I asked Jessie if she was okay. She was still crying her eyes out, so I got her a coffee and we went to see Martha, who's like the office grandma that everyone loves. Told them the whole story, and man, were we all fired up. 3 of the real veteran workers, guys who'd been there 25 plus years, straight up quit on the spot after hearing how Kyle spoke to Jessie. Stormed right into his office. He called them worthless and overpaid as they handed in their notices. Word got around, and soon a bunch more handed in their resignations too. Everyone except me, that is. We had a plan. See, Kyle didn't know we had this huge customer audit coming up in just 3 weeks. An audit that had cost us between 15 and 20 million euros if we failed, not to mention losing that massive contract. Kicker was, I was the only one qualified and certified to get us prepped for it. Once Kyle realized the whole department had quit except me, boy was he raging. He came charging up to me. "Why the hell did everyone quit?" I flatly told him, "Maybe because you're an a-hole and a sexist pig." "What did you just say to me, you a-hole?" he shouted. Keeping my cool, I replied, "You heard me. And do you remember that big audit in 3 weeks by customer X?" "Yeah, what about it?" he snarled. "Well, you know I'm the only one certified to get us prepared, right?" "Yeah, and I quit too then. I won't work for an a-hole boss like you. See ya." I turned and walked out, saying my goodbyes to the folks on the production floor that I'd gotten close with over the years. The VP of production noticed the ruckus and came over to ask what was happening. I filled him in and he was piping mad. Got on the line with the CEO, Robert, a guy I knew pretty well, yelling that the crap had hit the fan and to get his ass down to the production floor ASAP if he wanted to pass that audit. Robert asked if it was really that important. The VP was like, "Yeah, so move your ass down here now." The CEO came hauling ass with his whole C-suite entourage asking what was so damn crucial. I piped up, "Our entire department quit today and we won't come back until this mother ducker of a boss gets canned." They wanted the whole story, so we laid it out for them. How Kyle had gone nuclear on Jessie, insulted and drove out the longtime employees, the whole 9. The execs were fuming. They asked how to fix it, and I said, "Fire Kyle and hire someone who's actually fit for the job." Since I had the most training certs and qualifications, they asked if I wanted to take over. I happily said yes. We all marched up to the department's office space with the CEO leading the way. Kyle saw me and arrogantly sneered, "Oh, decided to come back and beg for your job, huh?" "Nah," I replied. "Just inspecting my new office, 'cause you're fired now." He actually laughed at that. "You're under me, peon. Only the CEO can fire me." At that moment, Robert appeared from around the corner. "Then get the duck out of my company, Kyle. You're fired, and I'll make sure every company knows what you did here." Kyle turned whiter than a ghost. The CEO called the cops and had Kyle arrested for trespassing after he refused to leave. In the end, the company offered me a $70K raise and a bonus option worth a cool $1 million. but I turned down the bonus and asked if we could split it between the team instead since I didn't need that much money. The CEO agreed, so everyone got their jobs back and a nice fat raise of about 15% each. We prepped for the audit without any issues. The customer passed us with flying colors, and it's been smooth sailing ever since. We're all one big happy work family again. The first one is an entitled People Story. I've lived in my house for over 15 years now and absolutely love it. It's got a big backyard with a bunch of beautiful tall oak trees that provide plenty of shade. My kids have grown up climbing those trees, and they mean a lot to me. About a year ago, the house next door sold, and this grumpy old guy named Carl moved in. Right from the start, I could tell he was going to be trouble. He started complaining about the smallest little things, like how my kids were too noisy when they played basketball in the driveway. I tried to be nice and accommodate him at first, but it seemed like nothing would make Carl happy. One Saturday morning, I woke up to the loud rumbling sound of heavy machinery in my backyard. I looked out the window and I couldn't believe what I was seeing. There was Carl, sitting on a bulldozer, plowing straight towards my beloved oak trees. He was bulldozing a path from his yard into mine, aiming to knock down my trees. I ran outside in my pajamas, waving my arms and yelling at him to stop. He just glared at me and kept driving the bulldozer closer. I asked him what on earth he was doing destroying my property. He said he was sick of the trees blocking the sun from his vegetable garden, so he was taking matters into his own hands. I reminded him that the trees were on my property, not his. But he shrugged and said the trees were a nuisance, so I should be thanking him for getting rid of them. I tried reasoning with him, but he was completely irrational. He claimed the trees diminished his property value and again complained about my kids making too much noise near them. Before I could stop him, Carl plowed down 2 of my beautiful oaks, reducing them to a pile of sawdust and rubble. I was shaking with anger, but I didn't want to get into a physical confrontation with this unhinged man. So I pulled out my phone and immediately called the police to report the destruction of my property. Within 10 minutes, 2 police cars came screeching up the street. The cops questioned Carl and me to get both sides of the story. Carl seemed totally unconcerned, casually admitting he had knocked down my trees because he felt like it. Meanwhile, I showed the officers the property line and the stumps that remained where my trees had been. The police cited Carl for destruction of private property and escorted him back to his house. They advised me to get an estimate for the damage and take the matter to civil court. I thanked the officers profusely before they left, feeling relieved that Carl was finally off my property. The very next morning, I contacted a lawyer named Jim who came highly recommended in my neighborhood. I told Jim the whole infuriating story of what Carl had done. Jim reassured me that I had an extremely strong case, given the clear evidence and multiple witnesses to Carl's actions. Together, Jim and I came up with a legal strategy to make Carl pay. First, we sent Carl a cease and desist letter, ordering him to stay off my property entirely or risk further legal action. Next, we had an arborist assess the value of my destroyed trees, which totaled over $15,000. Jim helped me file a lawsuit against Carl for the full value of the trees, emotional distress, and punitive damages. We gathered signed statements from neighbors who had witnessed Carl bulldozing my yard. I was able to provide the police report as evidence as well. When Carl was served with the lawsuit, he had the audacity to call me up and tell me to drop the case. He said he wouldn't pay me a dime and threatened to make my life miserable if I didn't back off. Well, that only made me more determined to see this through. Nobody messes with my trees and gets away with it. At the court date, the judge listened to both sides very carefully. Carl represented himself and tried to argue that the trees were a nuisance and eyesore, but Jim presented all the evidence we had gathered, including photos dating back years that showed how beautiful and well-maintained the trees were. In the end, the judge fully sided with me. Not only did Carl have to pay me $15,000 to replace the trees, but the judge awarded me an additional $5,000 for emotional distress. And to really drive the point home, Carl got slapped with $10,000 in punitive damages meant to deter him from ever wrongly destroying property again. When the judge announced the $30,000 judgment against him, Carl's face turned beet red. I could tell he wanted to lash out, but with the bailiff standing right there, he held his tongue. I smiled sweetly at Carl as the judge dismissed us from the courtroom. The next week, a brand new oak sapling was planted in my backyard, courtesy of the payment from Carl. And over the coming years, I'll diligently watch that little sapling grow into a proud, towering oak. It may take time to fully replace what I lost, but seeing that new tree root and flourish will give me great joy. As for Carl, I think he finally learned that you can't just bulldoze your way onto other people's property. I still see him skulking around his yard sometimes, glaring at my new baby oak, but he doesn't dare set foot on my land ever again. And thanks to my amazing lawyer, I ended up getting more than fairly compensated for Carl's insane stunt. The next one is a petty revenge story. First time posting, and I'm on mobile. So here's my story. I, 53F, am a disabled vet and use a variety of mobility aids to get around. I also get almost all my healthcare and meds from the local VA hospital. This last Monday, I realized that I was out of some meds and hadn't received the refills yet, so I ran to the VA hospital pharmacy to get enough to tide me over. Since my local VA hospital is absolutely huge, I always use my mobility scooter because there's absolutely no way I can physically navigate the parking lot, as well as the labyrinth that the inside consists of. After I completed my transactions and checked in with a couple of my health providers, I scooted myself out the doors with the intention of loading up my scooter in my vehicle and getting the heck out of Dodge. Now, with this being a Monday, everyone and their dog is trying to find parking to get into the building, so there are cars driving around looking for opening spots to park. As I'm heading past vehicles, one pulls slightly in front of me to block my ability to continue to move forward, and this Karen rolls down her window and yells at me for trying to cut in line. She was there first. Yada yada. Guy in the car next to me is just staring at her with this absolute WTF expression, about to get out of his vehicle to help me confront Karen. I shake my head and back my scooter up to go a different way to get to my vehicle. She passes me as I reach my truck and realizes that I'm loading up the scooter so I can leave. Well, she decides she's going to take my spot. Not today, Karen. I nod at the guy who wanted to help me, hop in my truck and back out of the parking space in a way that blocks Karen and gives easy access to the other guy. I did make sure to use all 5 fingers when I smiled and waved at her as I drove away. The next one is a malicious compliance story, and this just happened maybe 5 minutes ago and I think it's hilarious. I'm the facility manager for my building. Everything that happens and goes wrong is my responsibility, so I make sure everything runs smoothly. My boss had made it clear, it's my building and I was hired to not only keep people in line but run everything. I'm not a dick, but I hold people accountable, forcibly but politely. There was no facility manager for a long time before I came along, and both clients and employees ran amok with no order. In the 4 months I've been here, my boss has praised my performance and has gone to bat for me countless times. She's the best boss I've ever had. I've got a firm but fair approach, and my reputation reflects that. I've got a Karen in the building, and trust me, the name stereotype applies, who's just a counselor for family services, has nothing to do with our group. She likes to complain about everything and gives my boss a headache almost daily. She shares an office with another woman, who's unfortunately picking up on her Karen tendencies, Karen in training. I've been doing a keycard audit all week, and I knew to leave Karen's keycard alone because she's the only Karen in the building, so her name stands out. I am missing 75 keycards, lots of former employees having all-door access, dating all the way back to 2015. Can't have that. So I deleted a lot of them, especially if it had a wacky name or just a room number. However, I did delete Kit's card information because it wasn't under her name. She just came to tell me her keycard wasn't working, and Karen happened to be passing by and overheard it. I went and fixed Kit's keycard, and we went to check to see if it worked or not. We found Karen outside the office waiting, complaining to my boss that her keycard didn't work either. Karen wandered away and my boss rolled her eyes, and I smiled and told her I would take care of it. After checking to make sure Kit's keycard worked, I went downstairs to check the system, looked up Karen, and wouldn't you know it, her keycard was completely fine. In fact, it showed she had a master keycard, so I changed all of her permissions and limited her back to just her room only. I went upstairs and got my boss's attention because her office is next door to the ladies, and I mouthed, "Listen," and pointed. I opened their door and was all, "Hey Karen, I went and checked your keycard in the system. Everything is good to go. In fact, it said you had a master key to the building and per the company orders, since you're not a contractor or a company employee. I can't give you that access, so I had to revoke your status to just this room only. Can't have you bugging people on official business. Thanks for bringing your keycard to my attention." She started to object that she needed the master keycard because XYZ, and I was all, "Yeah, sorry." Maybe before, but I'm the facility manager and you don't need access to everything except this office. And if you do, it's outside your pay grade, so you'll have to come get me, okay? Cool, thanks, bye. And then just closed the door on her mid-sentence. My boss was quietly laughing her ass off in her office and gave me an air high five. The next one is an entitled people story. This happened Wednesday, and it's just so hilariously stupid to me I just had to share. You can be the judge on how stupid it is. Now I, 34M, stated in a previous post that I work with the famous Mart of Walls, but I had moved apartments between the setting of the previous post and now, opting for the workout of the online grocery department over the constant barrage of customers wanting their cold cuts. Depending on the day, I'm either in the back to set up for the pickups and deliveries or putting the orders in the customers' vehicles or out on the floor, picking the items for the orders. There are various commodities for paths, ranging from the general merchandise to frozen, chilled, and dry groceries. At the time of this, I was just finishing up an ambient produce path and was busy putting the loose produce in produce bags, which some were then bagged further for the deliveries. I had just tossed a bunch of bananas into a bag, figuratively of course, can't bruise the customer's fruit, and had turned around to grab another bag for the next order when I heard it, one of the many mating calls of the entitled species. I'm not entirely sure what it was, whether a throat clearing, a simple hey, or a quick excuse me, but it got my attention and I turned back around. As I turned, I came face to face with the male of this species, and what a majestic Ken he was. Probably not more than a few years older than myself, short beard and looking upset. This is where I would say some form of greeting and say something along the lines of, "How can I help you?" But I didn't even get a word out before this man, hereby abbreviated as K, started complaining. K, not for nothing, but if you're going to sell plums, there should be bags by them. Me. Understandably confused and not really one for confrontation. I'm sorry, K interrupts. When you sell stuff like that, there should be bags nearby. I don't want to go looking all around the place looking for one. At this point, I took my time to look around the area to see where bags were. There were 2 dispensers on either end of the aisle the plums were in, nestled under some produce scales, but both were empty. There was usually a roll on the nearby banana display table as well, though I couldn't tell how full it was from my vantage point. 2 more dispensers hung on the overhang of the wet wall, where the cold produce was, both with bags in them, and of course there was the dispenser I was literally standing next to, all within no more than 20 steps from the plums. This whole time, this Ken was complaining about the inconvenience of bags not being directly next to the plums, wondering, "What do you expect me to do? Carry them one at a time?" Me. Sorry. Now I would have turned this into an I don't work here lady mini-sode by using my default, I don't work in this department, but I can talk to who does and let them know the situation. It's not up to me to decide where the bags go. And as I had already grabbed another bag for another loose produce item, I was in the process of opening it up with the intention of handling it to this man. But once again he interrupts me. K. It's too late now. I don't want any plums anymore, you lost a sale. I was about to say sorry once again, but apparently I had a look that said, your refusal to purchase plums is not really tipping the scales in ways of hurting the store, but you do you. So once again, before I could utter a word, I'm interrupted yet again. K, now really angry. You lost a sale, and you don't even care. And he walked away, leaving me dumbfounded for a moment, trying to process. Did he really say that? Yes, he really said that. The whole encounter lasted no more than a minute. Now I'm nervous for a moment, thinking he's about to go get a manager, but then I thought, no, if he's not going to get plums because he has to walk 10 to 15 feet for a bag, that's on him. And went about my business. I did end up telling a produce associate, and they laughed at the audacity of this Ken. Sorry there's no dramatic, let me see your manager, no assault or police being called, no over-the-top shouting. Just a little story about a Ken who just wanted to complain because he's special. The next one is an entitled parent story. I'm 18 years old, and I don't remember the exact ages of my biological mom and her husband, but they are in their late 40s at least. I'll call them Claire and Daniel. Background. Claire had me and my brother while she was an addict and had a lot of untreated issues. Bipolar disorder, borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia, etc. I won't go into a lot of detail because it's very heavy, but long story short, She married a bad man. And because of his and her actions, she lost custody of us when we were 5. We eventually got adopted when we were 8. She divorced that man and is now married to Daniel. Story: Claire at the time had been diagnosed with a terminal illness, so I had agreed to fly out there to visit her. I had never gotten super close with Daniel, but we were relatively friendly. At first, the visit was okay, everyone was acting normal. But then things kind of started going downhill. Claire asked if I would consider moving out there for the time she had left, and I said I would consider it. She seemed to be happy with that answer at first, along with Daniel. But then it started going downhill. They started acting like I was definitely moving in, and started trying to make all of these decisions before I had even decided, like wanting to go to the Social Security office to see if I still qualified for insurance, etc. It was hard for me to push back on it and set boundaries because I'm autistic and communication is hard, so I just kind of brushed it off. One night, Claire and I were having a deep conversation and Daniel joined in, which led to him offering to adopt me. I explained that I was already adopted and that I did not want to be adopted again, and he seemed to drop the issue. Over the next few days, though, he started getting more authoritative, I guess. Whenever I talked about something, he would correct me, even if he was obviously wrong. It even got to the point where, when I was trying to bond with him and talk to him about my transgender experience, he straight up said that I should try to be comfortable being a woman, and that he didn't want me to get gender-affirming surgery, that I needed to fully experience being a woman before I decided. I deflected from the topic but felt very uncomfortable. When I flew home and told my mom everything, she texted Claire saying that she basically needed to take a chill pill, and that Daniel needed to stop inserting himself in our lives like he was a parent. The last thing I heard about the situation is that when my brother visited later, Daniel told him something basically to the effect that I was influenced easily, and that's why I'm non-binary. I haven't talked to him since, besides saying hi when I'm on the phone with Claire. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.